morning. Hope everybody had a good evening last night. I know I did. Thank you all for being here, getting up early, and joining us for this first keynote presentation. We have a great day of sessions ahead of us. I thank all the presenters to start us off for being here and putting together the programs for us to continue our education in the aquatic industry. But right now, I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to introduce our keynote speaker. This person's been in the pool industry for over, I'm going to say 20 years, 30 years. I'm going to say 30? It's okay. He's been in the industry for over 30 years. He conducted training sessions worldwide. He's the owner of Aquatic Facility Training and Consultants, a swimming pool education and consulting firm. He's also the owner and host of the Talking Pools podcast. How many of us listen to the Talking Pools podcast? That is amazing. The podcast series is geared towards the pool service professional. Rudy has also contributed dozens of articles to pool industry trade publications over the last decade and has certified several thousand pool operators and health officials, and is a New Jersey environmental and public health instructor at Rutgers State University. Rudy lives in Florida with his wife and childhood friend Joy. When he's not talking pools, crawling through pump rooms, or teaching CPO, he's a proud grandfather, horror movie buff, and avid traveler. Please join me in welcoming Rudy Stankowitz to the stage.
You know, I brought index cards with me, and it's kind of deja vu because the last time I brought index cards to a speech was in high school. I was the senior class council member, and somehow by drawing straws they decided that I was going to speak, but I was handed the stack of index cards as I went up onto the stage because they were afraid of what I was going to say. And my advisor, Mr. Raptis, sat at a table right in the front, fearful of what I was going to say. Hi, Selena. So the deja vu instance. Well, first, this one's on as well. So first, the thing I want to say is welcome and thank you for coming out. I appreciate everybody being here. This is the first World Aquatic Health Conference in 3 years due to unforeseen circumstances, social distancing, etc. And it's just nice that everybody could be here, so I do really appreciate you. And it's kind of humbling for me because I'm standing in front of not hundreds of years of experience in this industry. I'm standing in front of thousands of years collectively. That's a lot of swimming pool knowledge in this room. And the knowledge we have spans generations. In the 50s, we saw a change. We saw the introduction of stabilized chlorine tablets come about. Do we have anybody that was in the pool industry in the 60s here? No? We saw bronze pumps come out. They said it would end corrosion to the wet end. It's true. I pulled up the original ads. What about the 70s? Anybody in the industry in the 70s? I didn't hear you. Just you? Okay. What was your name? Ben. Everybody. Ben. Then from the 70s, do you remember the Artisan Pool Sweep when that came out? That drive gear in the head. Left-hand thread, right? Okay. 80s? There we go. And you're much quieter than Ben, for as many of you as there are. Let's try that again. From the 80s? Hey!
It was the 80s, after all.
And it's early, and there's coffee. I get it. Okay, so in the 80s, salt water generators started to rear their heads. And the ads said, you will never have to buy chlorine or acid again. Ever. Starting to see where they get it, right? Because we all know they don't use chlorine, they have a saltwater pool. So, 90s, robotic. The 90s knows where it's at, even at 9 o'clock in the morning. One more time, show them how it's done. There you go. So the 90s brought about robotic cleaners, phosphate removers. That started to become a thing about that time. So now all the people from the 80s are remembering, well, we didn't use that for 10 years, why do we need it now? But there's benefits, and we know that. Change is inevitable. New things come about. The double odds. Who started in the last 20? Yeah, a couple of people, a few, a handful. You guys got to see the first federal pool code go into effect, correct?
Yep.
Anybody? Virginia Grant Baker Act? 2010s. The teens. What did the teens bring about? Well, right in your face, the APSP and SPF merger. You got to see that in your first decade. The 2020s, if you just started, if you're just brand new, you came in with all this stuff existing, and immediately the second federal pool code. DOE, VSP pumps, right? So we've seen a lot of things change in the industry. And in that same time, there were a lot of things that came about. Let me just grab these really quick because I don't want to make mistakes. That they said were going to put us out of business over that entire time span. There were. They kept coming up. Everything was a threat. Mass merchants, remember? They're going to put the pool guy out of business. How'd that work out? And if some of you are here, tough, get over it. Mail order companies?
Who?
Not happening. YouTubers for the do-it-yourselfers. Did they put you out of business? No. Big box DIY. Am I allowed to say Home Depot and Lowe's? Probably not. But they started carrying chemicals, right? And we were worried about that until somebody asked the clerk there, how do you use them? You have to find some. Amazon. Enough said. E-commerce in general, no. The Great Recession of 2008, did that kill you? Did that put anybody here at? No. The stupid pandemic, and I actually have it written down as the stupid pandemic. No, not only didn't we go out of business, we grew. 23% over the prior year. We grew, and we grew because of you. If you weren't who you are, that wouldn't have happened. So there's something unique, there's something special about you that enables you to thrive in the face of adversity. The threats aren't over yet. There's more to come. And people will tell you that they need you to change. You have to adapt. You have to evolve. All of these things that sound like you need to be somebody else in order to make it happen. But that's the absolute last thing we need. I need you to be you, and I need you to be more you than you have ever been before. That's how we get through these things. Now, times are different. Times change. But I still need you to be you. And we've entered an age that's a little bit different, where we're a little bit better at sharing information, at helping one another. We've seen that shift, right? Because I remember when we didn't want to talk to anybody because they're our competitor, and I'm not telling you crap. It's kind of like giving somebody the wrong direction when you pull over and ask, how do you get to such and such? Oh, yeah, it's 5 miles that way. We're not like that anymore as a whole. There are some that stick to their guns on it, but we're kind of helpful now. And that's good. And that's how we get through these. We take the you-ness of you, amplify it, find your superpowers, and then we all focus it on a common goal. And we all have that common goal anyway. And then we look at the resources that we have around us. Even starting small, look at folks that are sitting at the table with you. Do you know everybody that's sitting at your tables? Do you know her name? Okay. It was a bad example, I was just checking. You know, you could have rolled with it a little bit. Help me out, first keynote up here. I'm just saying. Done with that side of the room. I'm not even asking you. All right, anyway. But that's the point. No matter what you need, there's somebody here who knows. And I know we all speak a different language, generation to generation. And maybe somebody can help me. Eat. Does anybody know what eat means? And she knows?
My son does. My youngest son used to a couple years ago.
But he's used that?
It's not used much anymore, I think. If I try
It's actually too old.
Yeah, if I used it, they looked at me like, oh, yeah. So
Okay.
It's been gone.
I actually, this is kind of cool for me because I don't know how many of you guys know this. I'm born and raised on Long Island, but I started in the pool industry in Houston, Texas. I was in the military, I got out, I ended up here, and I don't think any of us sets out to join the pool industry. I think the pool industry finds you, and it sucks you in. It is, it's like the black hole. It's a lot like the Hotel California, because you can check out, you just cannot ever leave, right? Has anybody tried to get away? Yeah, see? Look at that. And here you are. So, I actually started less than 5 miles from this location, my first job in the pool industry. Are there Houston people here? Yeah, so do we know where Bel Air is? The Bel Air area? I started over in the Bel Air area. I walked into the store, there were floats hung all over the ceiling and handwritten signs, and I looked around and I thought I hit an all new low. And I filled out the application. I was 21 something, and because I like to eat, so that was important. And I swore up and down that I would keep looking for something else, and well, here I am. But it was there that I first learned that people don't all speak the same language. So I was maybe a year into it where I met one of my first soon-to-be lifetime friends in the industry. 1992, I met Mr. Wayne Ivusich here in Texas. He was coming through with Taylor. I think he had just got the job. Now he just left the job, so obviously he budgets better than I do. But But I learned there that we don't all speak the same language, because I was standing there in a water test line, and it was about 3 people deep, and there was a lady standing there with her zip tie bag, Ziploc bag full of water, which I absolutely hate those. You should bring it in a bottle every single time, but she had this Ziploc bag. And she's coming to the front of the line. I can see her face is red. And it's the same story. I just didn't know it because I had a year under my belt, but I was an expert because I knew everything, right? 12 months in. But she's standing there in the line. She gets to the front, and she starts with the story, and she tells me, I've been to 5 other pool places, and I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and all they're doing is taking my money, and nobody can clear this algae problem up for me. I was like, watch this. So I took the sample, right? Obviously, this is the preferred way to do this. And poured it in, tested her water, and she's talking, and of course, as she's talking, she tells me she has a party on Saturday. Because I come to learn that every pool owner has a party every Saturday, especially when they need to get something done. Because that's going to motivate me more, their party, that I'm not invited to. If you really want to motivate me about this party on Saturday, she got me an invitation. But I went through the process for yellow out because I thought that would be the best way to go. There's a few steps involved, but I found it to work well. So I walked her through the steps, and I'm a little out of practice, so if I get something wrong, please feel free to yell out and correct, not you, Ben, but feel out to yell out and correct me. The first thing you do, raise your pH to 8 or higher, right? Soda ash. The next thing I was going to have her do was add 2 pounds of yellow out for 15,000 gallons of water, pour half of the dose around the perimeter, and broadcast the rest across the surface. Follow with an equal amount of calcium hypochlorite, 2 pounds per 15, half the dose around the perimeter, broadcast the rest across the surface. The next day, of course, run the pump overnight. The next day, repeat the dose of cal hypo, right? Okay. Next day, she doesn't come in. Cool, I wasn't expecting her to. The day after that, she doesn't come in. I'm thinking, all right, the party's gonna go good. I'm still not gonna be there, but it's gonna be all right. Then, Friday, she comes in, and there she is with her Ziploc bag of water and her purple face. Just looks shaky. I was like, all right. She makes her way to the front of the line, and you're just like everybody else. All you did was take my money and sell me crap that didn't work. And I couldn't really understand because I had not had bad results before. I went through my instructions with her line by line. Had her read back to me what she did line by line, and it all sounded very good. And she said, I did raise the pH. I did the 2 pounds of yellow out, half around the perimeter, half across the surface, the 2 pounds of cal hypo, half around the perimeter and half across the surface, ran it overnight and did the same thing the next day. And now what am I going to do with all of that chemical that's left on my pool deck that I had to pour around the pool? We don't speak the same language, do we? So I said the threats aren't over. There's a couple of things that are coming up. But before we do that, I want to talk about who we are. I called this the rise of the Entre-pool-neur because I think we're kind of special. Not in a bad way, but we're kind of special. And a lot of times when you hear folks talk about who is the pool professional, you hear things like jack of all trades, mechanic, chemist, plumber, right? Those are the typical things. But I want to tell you what I see. I see a room full of risk takers. I see perpetual students. People who understand that education is ongoing. I see people who are patient, attentive, and people that are great communicators. I see people that are persuasive. I see people that are unflappable. To add to their list, you have to be a detective, right? We have to figure out what happened when your customer's lying to you. That's not an easy job. You also have to be fortune tellers. You have to be able to look at the pool, look at the yard, and then look into the future based off of information that you know. You have to take everything into account because you know it can't just be about the water, because there truly are no cookie cutter pools, because there is no cookie cutter chemistry, just as there is no cookie cutter Entre-pool-neur. You're all different, you're all unique. We all have our own way of doing things, but you have to take everything, the environment and all of it into consideration if you're going to do it correctly. So I like to tell people, remember my 90s people, where are you again? Okay. So the folks from the 90s, during the 90s, an expression really came to its own. We would say you have to think outside the box. Now the expression came about in the 70s, right, Ben? But in the 90s it really took off, and you couldn't see somebody say think outside the box anywhere. It was everywhere. Every job application, every interview, right? We want people who think outside the box. That's who we want to fill this position. Why should I hire you? I think outside the box. I smudge the box. I trash the box. I burn the box. It's all about the box. Isn't a pool just a box filled with water? So I need you guys to think outside the pool and take everything into consideration. And if you can do that, those pools will get easier to take care of. Now here, you guys have the added responsibility of teaching people how to do that. And I'll tell you, I was a horrible student in high school. I went to my guidance counselor one time in senior year. It was when everybody was going to talk about what colleges they were applying to. And he told me that he really couldn't help me and I should have taken more shop classes. Mother, father. I'll tell you, I can say that. Wait, I have to check the list. No. We're good. Okay. So, but seriously, now whose fault is that? Now, I gotta admit, I will give any of you a run for your money with your teenage dirtbag photos. I promise. But still, isn't a lot of that weight on the teacher? And I'm not looking for excuses now. This is just something that I'm realizing now that I'm doing this, is that it's my job, it's my position to get these people engaged. No matter what it is I have to do to get somebody's attention, I should do that.
Don't go for the table.
I'm not up to tables yet. But no matter what it is, I should do something and I should find a way to get through to that person, right? And that's what teachers didn't do when we were growing up. They taught everybody as a group, and it worked for some people, not for other people. And the people it didn't work for, well, we fell by the wayside. But you have an opportunity to do it different, because here, in what you're doing, whether you're a speaker here for a company or a CPO instructor or whatever, you get to be the teacher that you always wanted to have. So think about that. What teacher would have been best for you? What traits of a teacher do you think would have most appealed to you and the other students to make it a little bit more fun, to make it a little bit more engaging? And you have that opportunity, which is so cool. Because there's nothing better than when you see that light bulb moment, right?
Yes.
When that aha moment that somebody goes through. That's what we shoot for. That's the opportunity that we have. That's why we do what we do. I haven't always taught, but I kind of have. Right? I don't know how many of you know my background, but a lot of you have never seen me without a cane before. A lot of you have just plain never seen me before, too. I guess we have that here. And I want to talk about that, but before we talk about that, I want to play a game. And you get absolutely no credit and win nothing. So it's the best kind of game. So, because There's a lot of stuff going on right now. We're coming off of a couple of bad years as far as supply chain goes. I said there were more threats coming. I said we weren't out of the woods, right? Now I do know that manufacturing, those manufacturers that are doing what they do have beefed things up to better handle your needs. But it doesn't mean that there's still not extra stress on the industry. There is still a urea shortage in Europe. If you're not familiar with what we get from that, from synthetic urea, cyanuric acid is a product that we make from that. We're not number one on their give list. We sit at the kiddie table, the pool industry does, because the main users of urea are agriculture. So we have to be in line. The stocks. Has anybody been following the stock for pool industry companies? Compared to 12 months ago, we're all down. Inflation is up. They say the recession's already started. Some say the recession is looming. Regardless, all of that newness that I talked about and this great group that we have here that you can collaborate with if you need to, talking about sharing again and how that's getting to be a better thing. You can do that. But I don't want you to be afraid of the recession, because what economic downturn does is expose opportunities. You can see an underserved niche in that period of time and come up with a way to serve them. In fact, I'm going to read a couple of slogans here, and I want you to tell me whose company this is. Simple, personal, real-time messaging. Nobody? So much fun game. That's WhatsApp. Move the way you want to. Uber. Explore the incredible near you. Groupon. Can I make it easier? Belong anywhere. All right, if it came with a house, it's what Swimsley does.
Airbnb.
Airbnb, yes! All right, here's the last one. And maybe these aren't the easiest examples, but they're all great examples, and I'll tell you why. So let's do this first. We all grow together. It's a square. These are all companies that are doing well. These are all companies that were developed, that came to be in the 2008 recession. That's what makes these all good examples. These are all companies that came about during a period of economic downturn. So there are opportunities. So I need you to keep that in mind. So when you look at things, that things do turn. First, I do need you to realize, look at this resource that you have. I've used it. And understand that the word impossible is only one space difference from the sentence, I'm possible. That's true. So, 2007, I'm guessing this is about when it started. 2008, I started having a little bit of trouble walking. I had a service company in North Central Florida, and I started to have trouble going across lawns, soft surfaces, things along those lines. So I immediately started going to doctors, because if you're going to do pool service work, walking is kind of important. And I went to a private practice doctor. He ran a bunch of tests, wanted to run more, but the insurance company considered those things to be exploratory, and they didn't do any of them. And I was like, okay. I was going to check my phone to see what time it is, but I don't have it. So I left there, and I decided I would go to the VA. Because they'll run it, I'm a veteran, why not take advantage of it? So I went to the VA, and they immediately started to diagnose me with things like MS, ALS, demyelinating polyneuropathy, a whole bunch of things that, took a long time for me to be able to pronounce. But they went back and forth, and couldn't find any conclusive proof of anything. So the folks at the VA sent me to the University of Florida Shands Hospital, so UF Shands. So I went there, and again, I went through all the testing. I went to every doctor appointment. I didn't skip any of them. I wanted this solved, and I wasn't going to give up. And this went on for about 6 years before the walking, or the lack of walking, got bad enough that I had no choice but to sell my service company, which I loved doing. So I got good money for it, and I was happy about that. So I sold my service company, I had a little bit of money in the bank, and then I wanted to figure out what I was going to do, but I didn't want to change. So I reached out to that time the NSPF to talk about teaching the CPO classes. Because yes, I love doing pool service, but I also like talking about pools, right? So I reached out, I went through the course, and I started teaching there. And I did. My wife actually said, "Oh, you went out and got a job where you can talk about pools all day?" I said, "Yeah." So that doesn't mean it took any of the weight off of it when I got home. That still continued. It was just different. So I started teaching those classes, and the walking still continued to get harder. About 2016, I started carrying a cane because I couldn't walk without one. Still, now they're thinking Gulf War illness. So I get sent to the War-Related Injury Center in DC, who says, nope. Who sent me to the Mayo Clinic. I go to the Mayo Clinic. Ultimately, they decide it's all in my head. Conversion disorder, that's what they called it. It must be in your head. So they want me to attend this intense 30-day program to rewire my brain. With no other treatment options up so far, I decided to go for it. Now, luckily, this timed right at the beginning of the pandemic, so none of you noticed I disappeared. So I went for that, and it was really a lot of brainwashing. It would sit you down at a table, you weren't allowed to use the P word, pain. You couldn't use words along those lines. They had exercise program. I went to pick up a pair of 6-pound dumbbells to do flies. They freaked out, too much weight. It's like, serious? Anyway, so 30 days of that, nothing. About the time that I was leaving there, I completely lost my ability to walk. I could not walk without pain. I could not make it to my mailbox. I could not make it to my kitchen table. And it didn't matter how many pain meds I took to make that happen. It just wasn't. So that's probably the closest I came to quitting. Giving up. But my wife wouldn't let me. My friends wouldn't let me. Natalie was a huge driving force. And I had another doctor appointment. This time it was with a nurse practitioner at Shands. And I went and saw her, and I got there, and I sat up on the edge of the table, and we're talking, and she goes to check my reflexes, and when she hits me in the knee with the hammer, nothing moves. Hits me in the knee with the rubber hammer on the other side, nothing moves. Dead, right? She freaks out. All the other doctors knew this. They all ran that test, and they were kind of like, huh, look at that. It's like, okay. But her getting worried about it got me thinking, because for as much as everybody's looked at my symptoms, nobody's ever considered that to be a symptom. So I went home and I did everything we tell our customers not to do.
YouTube?
I went on Google and I plugged in my symptoms and I plugged in that as a symptom, and immediately the only thing that came up was peripheral neuropathy. And peripheral neuropathy is caused by a problem at L3, L4 in your spine. So I went back and I told my physician's assistant, just like when your customers tell you, here, I found this on Google, right? But she was cool, right? So she sends me for an MRI, and guess what? L3, L4, L5, completely crushed in my spine. She asked if I had medical training. I said, no, I'm a pool guy. Because we get shit and stuff done. It's on the list. So we get stuff done. But yeah, so that's what happened. So then I had to go, they set it up for surgery, but in order to get the surgery, I have to get the shots first. It's some insurance thing. They won't give you the surgery. They won't pay for the surgery until you get the shots. So they go through the shots, and they can't get the needle in between the vertebrae because it's all. They do the surgery. I'm laid up. So what am I going to do? Within a month, I can walk without a cane. It's not perfect, but I can walk without a cane. And I can go a pretty good distance before I need to take a rest. I am still left with nerve damage, so I fall sometimes, but not a lot. Only twice since the surgery. It's a heck of a lot better than things used to be. So, I still needed to work. I'm laid up, I need to heal, so I like to talk about pools, so I wrote a book about algae, right? About black algae specifically. But I don't know everything and I need help. And this is where I was talking about the sharing of information and how this room has such a wealth of knowledge for you to pull from if you would only use it. There are people here who are happy to help. I'm happy to help if I can. So I need somebody to edit this book. So I reached out to my friend Richard Falk, who took care of everything except for the algae specifics. And for that, I reached out to Dr. Darla Doors, is she here? From Montana. And she helped me by setting me up with one of her people to go through those things. I've reached out on several occasions for different presentations that I've done, microbiological, with my friend Mr. Roy Bohr, who has always been nothing but helpful. When I needed help getting materials and things for CPO, I've had Natalie and Ashley. Is she still out at the front desk? Okay. Well, you'll tell her. She's my hero. So, but the thing is, there's people that can help you. Now, before the pandemic, the last trade show I went to was the Florida show, which I know they don't call it that anymore, but tough, that's what I call it. So I went to, this isn't their event, so I went to the Florida show, and if you've ever been to the Florida show, from the parking lot to the actual show, there's this 5-mile long hallway.
Right.
I made it halfway down the hallway, and I couldn't move. So I called a couple of friends that were there, Andrea Nanini and Todd, Derek Todd, you know him. And they came and carried me back to my vehicle where I sat until I was able to drive back home. I never made it in. But you see, when I fell, I had people there that would pick me up, right? And that's what we do for one another. When somebody falls, we need help to pick them back up. And that's how the industry gets better, because I truly believe that this sharing of knowledge thing, the way the industry should be, is not that everybody has to follow the same path and make the same mistakes and reinvent the same wheels, but what should happen is it should be more like a relay race. And I've made it this far, and I'm old, so you should be eyeing me up. But right now, I'm standing here with the baton and I'm ready for you to grab it, and I want to see how far you can take it. I don't want you to have to hack through the same weeds I had to hack through to get here. I want you to start where I am, because that's how we truly move forward. Now, last week, I was at the Aqua show in Charlotte, and I was talking with David Gilbreth and Eddie Lopez. Terry, are you here? Okay. So I was walking and talking with them. We actually, great people. I'll tell you, we were trying to get some of the people at the Aqua show to take selfies with your jugs, telling them they were the actual ones in the back of Jamie Foxx's truck. So, you all haven't seen that movie. But as I was leaving the presentation, as I was leaving the show at the end of the day, I started walking back to the building, and that was the last time my legs had given out recently, and I hit the sidewalk. So for them, it must have been like they were walking alongside me and I stepped in a hole, because they just disappeared. But they immediately helped me back up. Until I was okay, and they made sure that I got to the hotel and everything was fine. And the cool thing about whatever it is that I have going on is that it only takes about a minute before everything is just perfectly fine again. It's weird, but it's mine. I can walk, I'm happy, I don't care. So, but that's what we do for one another. And all of these people are here. You have these resources if you have a question. So you know what? There are people here new to the pool industry. There are people here that are new to teaching. There's people here that are new to everything. Reach out to somebody that's been doing it for a while, or reach out to somebody on your same level, because you know what? A second set of eyes definitely never hurts. That's how we get through these things. That's how we get through economic downturn. That's how we get through recession. That's how we get, because like I mentioned, you know what? We don't speak the same language, and I will tell you point blank, I don't do my best work advertising to millennials or Gen Z. But you know what? You need Gen X. I got you. The untouchable generation. But seriously, if you need help marketing to that group, I need help marketing to the others. And we can work together with that. If you run out of product, if you can't get what you normally need, find an old person. Because half of this stuff you're using didn't exist when we started in the industry anyway, and there is other stuff that'll do something similar, right? It's out there, it's easy to get. That's how we get through this. Sharing, being a team. Competition is only bad if your competition is undercutting, doing things along those lines. As long as everything's a level playing field, it's okay to collaborate, right? As long as everybody's on the same team, as long as everybody has the same goals, we can get there together. Now, I'm going to give you time for questions if you have any. I don't know if you do, but the holidays are coming up, and I did want to leave you with a holiday story. When I had my service company, I had a handful of guys that were working for me. And I always remembered when I first started in the industry that, you know, things were done a little bit differently. We always would have a bonus at Christmas time, right? Some days off. But they used to also give us like a turkey at Thanksgiving, or at least a gift certificate or something. They do nice at some, remember in the 70s, right? They do something nice at Thanksgiving time also. So I wanted to relive that, and I wanted my employees to experience that. I know it's not. So I'm walking through the grocery store, heading to the register. My wife calls and I tell her what I'm doing, and she says, all right, but before you get to the register, do me a favor. And I said, what's that? She goes, get them store brand turkeys out of your cart and put butterballs in there, cheap. So I did, because that's what I had. But I brought the butterballs home and I stuck them in the freezer. We got to the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving, and I decided that's when I was going to give them to them, so that way they'd have time to thaw it out. They didn't have to buy one if they didn't already have one. I was going to give them a turkey for Thanksgiving. So at the end of the day, Friday, that's exactly what I did. And everybody seemed really happy about it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. This is great. And I felt good, because that's what I was trying to do, right? I wanted everybody to be happy. Then Monday morning came. One of my best guys didn't show up. I was like, okay, it's kind of weird. I gave him a little bit of time. He was a good guy, he's been there. And I reached out, which if he wasn't a good guy, I wouldn't have even reached out. You know, no call, no show, you're gone. But I called him, and I got nothing. An hour later, I started getting text messages that covered almost every word on the list of words I'm not allowed to say here. You effing this, you piece of crap, blah, blah. He didn't say crap. And I was like, okay, well, what is this? What's going on and everything? So I responded again. It took another hour and came back. The only reason you gave me a turkey is because you know you don't pay me well enough to feed my family. True story. So I don't hear from him again. I get home, I go on Facebook because, you know, I don't have it on my phone because this would rot my brain. But I get home, I go on Facebook, and he left a comment on my Facebook page, and the only thing it says is, hashtag, you butterball me bro. 2 days later, his wife starts calling, wanting to know why I fired him. They have a baby at home they have to feed. He needs this job. Why did I fire him? And I was, huh? Anyway, I'm guessing he didn't want to work, and he needed an excuse to not work with the baby. I don't think it's a good one, but yeah, so happy Thanksgiving. All right. If you do not listen to the Talking Pools podcast, you're wrong. Listen, please listen. We appreciate you guys. It's definitely a podcast for the pool professional. We are not a typical interview style podcast, so you will not be bombarded with infomercial after infomercial. We do interviews, but they are very limited. Check it out. We have 3 different shows every week. The goal is sharing of information, like we talked about. The goal is to get that information across on another platform that's a little bit more broader than the ones we've been doing. You can definitely hit me up on Facebook, Instagram. You can hit me up on TikTok, but that's a scary place. There's a bunch of vile children on that. Anyway, welcome to the Whack.